Mark Twain Selected Works. The Late Benjamin Franklin. July 1870. Never put off till tomorrow what you can do day after tomorrow just as well. B.F. This party was one of those persons whom they call philosophers. He was twins, being born simultaneously in two different houses in the city of Boston. These houses remain unto this day, and have signs upon them worded in accordance with the facts. The signs are considered well enough to have, though not necessary, because the inhabitants point out the two birthplaces to the stranger anyhow, and sometimes as often as several times in the same day. The subject of this memoir was of a vicious disposition, and early prostituted his talents to the invention of maxims and aphorisms calculated to inflict suffering upon the rising generation of all subsequent ages. His simplest acts, also, were contrived with the view to their being held up for the emulation of boys forever, boys who might otherwise have been happy. It was in this spirit that he became the son of a soap boiler, and probably for no other reason than that the efforts of all future boys who tried to be anything might be looked upon with suspicion unless they were the sons of soap boilers. With a malevolence which is without parallel in history, he would work all day and then sit up nights and let on to be studying algebra by the light of a smoldering fire, so that all other boys might have to do that also, or else have Benjamin Franklin thrown up to them. Not satisfied with these proceedings, he had a fashion of living wholly on bread and water, and studying astronomy at mealtime, a thing which has brought affliction to millions of boys since, whose fathers had read Franklin's pernicious biography. His maxims were full of animosity toward boys. Nowadays, a boy cannot follow out a single natural instinct without tumbling over some of those everlasting aphorisms and hearing from Franklin on the spot. If he buys 2 cents worth of peanuts, his father says, "Remember what Franklin has said, my son? A groat a day is a penny a year." And the comfort is all gone out of those peanuts. If he wants to spin his top when he has done work, his father quotes, "Procrastination is the thief of time." If he does a virtuous action, he never gets anything for it because virtue is its own reward. And that boy is hounded to death and robbed of his natural rest, because Franklin said once in one of his inspired flights of malignity, "Early to bed and early to rise make a man healthy and wealthy and wise," as if it were any object to a boy to be healthy and wealthy and wise on such terms. The sorrow that maxim has cost me through my parents' experimenting on me with it, tongue cannot tell. The legitimate result is my present state of general debility, indigence, and mental aberration. My parents used to have me up before 9 o'clock in the morning sometimes when I was a boy, If they had let me take my natural rest, where would I have been now? Keeping store, no doubt, and respected by all. And what an adroit old adventurer the subject of this memoir was. In order to get a chance to fly his kite on Sunday, he used to hang a key on the string and let on to be fishing for lightning. And the guileless public would go home chirping about the wisdom and the genius of the hoary Sabbath breaker. If anybody caught him playing mumble-peg by himself after the age of 60, he would immediately appear to be ciphering out how the grass grew, as if it was any of his business. My grandfather knew him well, and he says Franklin was always fixed, always ready. If a body during his old age happened on him unexpectedly when he was catching flies or making mud pies or sliding on the cellar door, he would immediately look wise and rip out a Maxim and walk off with his nose in the air and his cap turned wrong side before, trying to appear absent-minded and eccentric. He was a hard lot. He invented a stove that would smoke your head off in 4 hours by the clock. One can see the almost devilish satisfaction he took in it by his giving it his name. He was always proud of telling how he entered Philadelphia for the first time with nothing in the world but 2 shillings in his pocket and 4 rolls of bread under his arm. But really, when you come to examine it critically, it was nothing. Anybody could have done it. To the subject of this memoir belongs the honor of recommending the army to go back to bows and arrows in place of bayonets and muskets. He observed with his customary force that the bayonet was very well under some circumstances, but that he doubted whether it could be used with accuracy at long range. Benjamin Franklin did a great many notable things for his country and made her young name to be honored in many lands as the mother of such a son. It is not the idea of this memoir to ignore that or cover it up. No. The simple idea of it is to snub those pretentious maxims of his, which he worked up with a great show of originality out of truisms that had become wearisome platitudes as early as the dispersion from Babel, and also to snub his stove and his military inspirations, his unseemly endeavor to make himself conspicuous when he entered Philadelphia, and his flying his kite and fooling away his time in all sorts of such ways, when he ought to have been foraging for soap fat or constructing candles. I merely desired to do away with somewhat of the prevalent calamitous idea among heads of families that Franklin acquired his great genius by working for nothing, studying by moonlight, and getting up in the night instead of waiting till morning like a Christian, and that this program, rigidly inflicted, will make a Franklin of every father's fool. It is time these gentlemen were finding out that these execrable eccentricities of instinct and conduct are only the evidences of genius, not the creators of it. I wish I had been the father of my parents long enough to make them comprehend this truth, and thus prepare them to let their son have an easier time of it. When I was a child, I had to boil soap. Notwithstanding, my father was wealthy, and I had to get up early and study geometry at breakfast and peddle my own poetry and do everything just as Franklin did, in the solemn hope that I would be a Franklin some day. And here I am.